The first bullet not only tears through flesh, it tears through generations of peace. Wow. That quote really sets the scene for what we're getting into today.
It really does. A powerful start.
Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. So last time we looked at the creation of India and Pakistan. Today, we're zooming in on what happened next, specifically the First Indo-Pak War.
And the real flashpoint, the battle for Kashmir, late 1947.
Exactly. This isn't just dates and battles, though. It's a story packed with really tough decisions, huge risks.
And just intense emotions on all sides. It fundamentally changed South Asia.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. Partition happens, British India is divided, but then you have these princely states.
Right, hundreds of them, actually. They weren't directly ruled by the British Crown. They had their own rulers, treaties, sort of a unique status.
And suddenly they have to choose India, Pakistan, or somehow stay independent.
A massive decision. And smack in the middle of this geopolitical puzzle is Kashmir.
Often called the crown jewel. Beautiful place, strategically vital.
And demographically complex. You had a majority Muslim population, but the ruler was the Hindu Maharaja Hari Singh.
Talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place. He hesitated, didn't he? Didn't commit right away.
He did. Maybe he dreamt of an independent Kashmir. Maybe he was just paralyzed by the options. But that hesitation, well...
It turned out to be incredibly dangerous. The whole region was a powder keg.
And Pakistan's perspective on that hesitation is key here. They saw this Muslim-majority state, led by a Hindu ruler who seemed reluctant to join India.
And they saw it as an opportunity.
Pretty much. An opportunity to, bring Kashmir into Pakistan, aligning it with what they saw as the demographic logic. Not necessarily seeing it as Hari Singh wanting independence, but more like indecision they could capitalize on.
So that difference, the Maharaja stalling and Pakistan seeing a chance that really lit the fuse.
It absolutely did. Which brings us to October 22nd, 1947. Things escalate dramatically.
Yeah, this is when thousands of tribal fighters, Pashtuns mostly, from Pakistan's northwest frontier province cross into Kashmir.
Now, technically, these weren't official Pakistani army soldiers. That's important.
But it's hard to imagine they were just acting completely on their own, right? Without any kind of nod from somewhere.
Let's just say the circumstances were suggestive, and their advance was fast and brutal.
They swept through places like Muzaffarabad, Baramulla.
And the stories that came out of there are just horrific. Reports of attacks on civilians, looting, chaos. It created an immediate, desperate crisis for the Maharaja. His own forces were overwhelmed.
Completely overwhelmed. So what does he do? He sends a desperate plea to India. Help us.
But India had a condition, a very significant one.
Right, accession. He had to formally sign the Instrument of Accession, making Kashmir legally part of India before India would send troops.
Imagine that pressure. Late-night decision, tribal forces getting closer to Srinagar. He essentially had no other real options left.
He signed. And then India's response had to be incredibly fast.
Oh, unbelievably fast.
Yeah.
It was a race against the clock. October 27th, 1947, Indian Army troops, the Sikh Regiment, are airlifted directly into Srinagar.
Just in time.
Yeah.
And if they'd been delayed even by a day, maybe even hours.
Srinagar could have fallen. The whole valley might have been lost. It was that close.
You can just picture those planes landing, soldiers deploying immediately, setting up defenses. That Srinagar airfield must have been absolutely crucial.
It was the critical point. Holding the airport meant India could keep bringing in troops and supplies if the invaders took it.
Game over, basically. Or at least a much, much harder fight for India.
Severely crippled, yeah. It was the lifeline.
So Srinagar was secured, but the fighting wasn't just there, was it?
No, not at all. Fierce battles erupted in other key locations too. Uri, Poonch, Nowshera. These became major fronts. The terrain was tough, mountainous.
And the Indian troops often faced, well, difficult odds.
They did. There was incredible resilience shown in those early days.
And amidst all this, you get these incredible stories of individual heroism. We have to mention Major Somnath Sharma.
Absolutely. A truly remarkable story. He was commanding a company near Srinagar at Budgam.
And they came under heavy attack, right? Seriously outnumbered.
Hugely outnumbered. He himself was wounded. His arm was in a plaster cast, I believe. But he refused to be evacuated. Stayed right there, directing his men, even helping load magazines.
And his final radio message? It's just chillin'.
It really is. The enemy is only 50 yards from us. We are heavily outnumbered. We are under devastating fire. I shall not withdraw an inch, but will fight to our last man.
Incredible courage. He didn't survive that battle.
No, he didn't. He was posthumously awarded India's very first Paramveer Chakra, the highest gallantry award. His actions likely saved Srinagar that day.
An amazing story of sacrifice. Okay, so the war is escalating, spreading, and then India's Prime Minister Nehru decides to take it to the United Nations. This was early 1948.
Yeah, a significant diplomatic move. The hope was, I think, to get international mediation, find a peaceful way out.
And the UN did come up with a proposal, didn't they?
They did. The Security Council recommended a ceasefire, followed by a plebiscite.
A plebiscite means
A vote, letting the people of Kashmir decide for themselves whether to join India or Pakistan. Seems straightforward, right?
but it wasn't. What went wrong?
Well, the conditions attached were the problem. The UN resolution called for Pakistan to withdraw its troops and the tribal fighters first.
Okay.
Pakistan basically refused to fully withdraw from the areas they controlled. And India argued that without that complete withdrawal, you couldn't possibly hold a fair and free vote.
So the conditions weren't met, and the plebiscite just never happened.
Exactly. That fundamental disagreement over the withdrawal stalled the whole process. It's a really crucial point that shaped everything afterwards.
So no resolution through the UN vote. What happened on the ground then?
Eventually, a ceasefire was agreed upon. It came into effect on January 1st, 1949.
And that ceasefire line, it essentially froze the conflict in place.
Pretty much. It divided Kashmir. The part India administered became Jammu and Kashmir state within India. The part Pakistan controlled became known as Azad Kashmir and the northern areas.
And that dividing line, that's what eventually became known as the line of control, the Law C.
That's right. Initially a ceasefire line, later formalized as the Law C after the 1971 war. And sadly, it remains one of the most heavily militarized borders in the world.
It's just impossible to talk about this without thinking about the human cost, beyond the politics and the military stuff.
Oh, absolutely devastating. Lives shattered, families torn apart, communities fractured. For the people of Kashmir, this wasn't just a line on a map. It was
A deep wound.
a wound that never really healed. That
Yeah.
captures it perfectly.
So this first war, it wasn't just about territory, was it? It set a precedent.
It really did. It established this deep-seated mistrust between India and Pakistan that, frankly, persists to this day. It forged national narratives on both sides, stories of patriotism, sacrifice, heroism.
But also decades of conflict, sorrow, and unresolved tension. A defining moment.
Absolutely. It set the stage for so much that followed.
And thinking about those deep emotions and ongoing rivalries, our source material for the next deep dive actually points us towards a completely different kind of battleground.
Ah, yes. Equally intense in its own way.
The cricket pitch. Next time, we're going to explore that incredible, often symbolic, India versus Pakistan cricket rivalry.
Which brings us to something important for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. How do these huge historical moments, like 1947 in Kashmir,
How do they echo down the years? Not just in politics, but in culture, in sport, in the way people feel.
exactly, how does a war fought decades ago connect to the passions you see in a stadium today? It really highlights how interconnected everything is, how past decisions cast such long shadows.
Definitely something to think about. That's all for this deep dive.
See you next time.